505 Report is brought to you exclusively from 505 North Francis Street. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to the 505 Report presented by the Daily Cardinal. This is the first episode of this. I'm happy that you're listening and you're in our audience. I'm Jake Nisse from Warren, New Jersey, just to introduce myself a little bit. And I'll let my co-host introduce himself right now.
Well, thank you, Jake. I'm Jon Sklar, and I'm from Ardsley, New York, and Westchester, New York. And it's great to be joining my partner here on this new endeavor we have.
Yeah, absolutely.
It should be a lot of fun.
We're both freshmen at the University of Wisconsin, and we just thought this would be a fun thing to do. So we're going to jump right into it now. The World Series of Baseball. John was at Game 4 at Wrigley Field.
Let me just give some background on the story. Okay. I mean, I am, if not the biggest Mets fan on the face of the planet. And so, living here in Madison, Wisconsin, 3-hour drive from Chicago,
right?
I felt that it was my destiny to make it to Game 4 at Wrigley Field.
It's predetermined.
Yes, it was my predestiny to get there. And a couple of buddies and I, we didn't have a car at first. We didn't have tickets.
Yeah, you told me that you guys were trying to find a zip car.
Yes, we couldn't get a zip car. We couldn't get a rental car.
How did you get there?
We borrowed someone's car. A friend of ours.
Who drove?
Might have paid them off a little bit. Okay. One of my friends drove. I drove on the way back, and we made it by the bottom of the second inning. Mets were up 6-0.
Wow.
Cubs fans wanted to fight us.
Yeah.
And it was just a magical moment there on the north side of Chicago with Terry Collins, the 66-year-old manager of the New York Mets. First postseason appearance for the man. He's lived baseball his entire life. And he finally got his chance to make the World Series with a team really that has struggled, a franchise that has struggled for almost a decade, Nisse. I mean,
let me just cut you off for a second.
Please.
Like, I used to be a Mets fan. I really don't follow baseball anymore, so I'm not going to take credit for the Mets getting to the World Series right now. But just even across, like, the 4 major sports, like, aside from baseball, the Mets are so synonymous with failure,
with losing and with embarrassing
and just disappointment. I mean, like, how does it feel for you guys to like finally be validated? Like, my grandpa's a Mets fan, and every season he says like, "Oh, like they'll have a good season," and like it actually like came true this year. Like,
I mean, watching Jay Familiar, the closer of the Mets, who actually has not given up a single run the entire postseason.
Wow, that's.
Just seeing him strike out Dexter Fowler to win the pennant, it defied all logic to see this team winning. And what makes this so interesting, Nisse, coming up here, is that they're playing a team in the World Series in the Kansas City Royals who have been abysmal for several decades now.
Right, so almost 2
So you have
underdogs. America has to choose which underdog.
Right, I mean, obviously the Royals made the World Series last year in a crazy run, but you have 2 teams
historically
here
at least
who have been historically bad.
Right.
There's no Yankees, there's no Cardinals, there's no Giants in this World Series.
So you don't think there's necessarily a team that the nation will be like rooting against? You think?
I really don't think there's an easy answer. Usually, whoever's playing the Yankees or the a powerhouse in the World Series. The same thing in football. People are going to root against the Patriots. People are going to root against the Seahawks.
Right, exactly.
But you have 2 teams here who, both based on their pitching, both based on, their defense. Royals based on their bullpen, Mets based on their starting pitching. It should be a phenomenal series. It's going to be entertaining. It's going to be flary. There's a lot of anger on both sides.
I'm sure the Mets are still a little bitter about having one of their guys' legs broken.
Right. Ruben Tejada, their shortstop, who will be out for the World Series. They are getting Wander Uribe back, which will be big off the bench. But, this is going to be a historical week here for both cities. I know both cities are really behind their teams.
So if I can just ask you to put your bias aside for a second and give me
I will try to do that.
Legitimate prediction of how the World Series is going to pan out, what would you tell me?
I think you have to go Mets in 6. I really think this is a team of destiny.
Who has the home field advantage?
The Royals do. The Royals will have Game 1 and 2 will be at Kauffman Stadium this coming Tuesday. And I really just think the Mets pitching, having Harvey, Syndergaard, DeGrom, and Mets all throwing, the Dodgers and Cubs both had much better lineups than the Royals. They did not stand a chance.
Wow. Okay.
I really think this is the Mets' year, and I really think you'll be seeing a parade in New York City very, very soon, Nisse.
Okay.
That's the prediction.
We're going to switch gears now to another sport. You just said the Mets, it's their year.
Yes.
In terms of football, the Pats, Bengals, Packers, and Broncos, it could all be their year right now.
Right.
They're all 6-0 at the time of recording. And the Panthers are also 5-0. I believe they're in the middle of a game. And the Falcons are 6-1. So what do you make of all those teams that are kind of at the top of the NFL?
You know, you look at these teams, Nisse, and obviously you expect New England, Green Bay, Denver
Your usual
to be there.
Suspects.
Even with how bad Peyton Manning's playing, we can get into that later in the program.
Yeah.
Seeing the Falcons at 6-1, a team that Mike Smith, their head coach, was fired at the end of last year. Dan Quinn coming in to Atlanta from Seattle.
Right.
6-1 with what has always been described as a very talented team that has really underachieved. I mean,
I really think what did they win last year? 5 or 6 games.
I think they went about 6-10. I think they had a chance to win the NFC South at the end.
Right.
And,
I mean, my vision of the Falcons has never been as a 6-10 team. My vision of the Falcons is, favorably because the Giants beat them in the first round of the playoffs the last time we won the Super Bowl, but it's of a playoff team.
Right.
A good team. You have Julio Jones and Matt Ryan there.
I've always thought them to be talented, but underachieving. I mean, they've always had talent. They've always brought guys in.
It's really just
Roddy White, too. Yeah. I mean, O.C. Umenyiora, they brought in a few years ago.
Right.
This team has really underachieved, and the owner, Arthur Blank, has invested a lot of money. He's building a new stadium right next door to the Georgia Dome. And I really think he's expecting big things this year. But what you have to deal with is the fact that you have Carolina sitting right there in the same division.
Right.
And Cam Newton right now is playing, I think, his best football in the NFL that he's ever played.
I mean, I have to say, a 5-0 start for them, maybe 6-0 after this recording. Their receiving corps is a little weak for that.
It is. I mean, it's a team that is reliant on Greg Olsen.
Right.
I mean, they lost Kelvin Benjamin before the year to a really tough ACL injury in the preseason.
Yeah, that's really remarkable. They're 5-0.
And you have
Luke Kuechly is stepping in there playing defense as well.
But the running game has been great. Ron Rivera's defense very strong.
Almost a ragtag group of individuals, though, especially for a 5-0 record.
Right. So you look at the NFC. You look at the NFC South, which was one of the worst division in football actually last year. And this year you have two teams that are absolute Super Bowl contenders as we sit almost at the midway point. A little bit before the midway point. It was of the season.
I think it was 3 years ago though that the NFC South had 3 teams that were 10-6, and so there's a lot of talent in that division. I think it just needs to be managed.
You look at New Orleans, who had a good win today over Indianapolis, team that really has not been what they've been in the past. I mean, Drew Brees has been hurt. Their defense has been very
shoddy,
weak.
Yeah.
So you have them as the third team, and then Tampa Bay with Lovie Smith at the helm of that team with Jameis Winston. So that's a tough division. I mean, whoever comes out of that, you'll probably maybe see one of the wild card spots coming out of that division.
Right.
So that was a big deal that those teams, and earlier today, the New York Football Giants, who I also would consider to be a fan of, had a great win over the Dallas Cowboys at home, 27-20.
Absolutely. It looks like another one of those games that we were going to throw away, honestly.
Right. I mean, you look at the Giants, and
we just had so many the amount of takeaways we had. I think it was 4, and we only ended up with 27 points.
Right. You have Dallas without Tony Romo, without Des Bryant.
Honestly, that's not that impressive to win by 7.
No, it was
a Dallas team that's that depleted. It really isn't that impressive. But the important thing now is that we have a winning record. The Giants have a winning record again. I should try to stay objective here.
I mean, they're in first place this year. I mean, you can't be.
They are in first place, pending what happens next game. And really, if they went 1-3 in the division, that would be pretty calamitous. So now they're 500 in the division. That's okay. Just another team that has a lot of talent that just needs to kind of harness it. Odell Beckham Jr. is obviously a breakout star. A little bit of a hothead we're seeing, actually.
Well, you saw the stuff in Buffalo a few weeks ago.
Punching players.
There was a lot of stuff reported about him.
He's very talented. People know Eli Manning. At the very least, whatever your criticisms are against him, if you put good players around him and put him in a system that he's going to succeed in, he's going to do well. This year, Shane Vereen is helping him a lot. He's a good pass-catching back. The running game looks better. The defense is taking a little pressure off the offense. The offense isn't on the field all the time. And Ruben Randall's elevated his play a little bit too. He had an amazing one-handed catch today. So the Giants, I predicted they'd be between 7 and 9 wins. I still think that's accurate. Hopefully it's a little closer to 9 after this game.
I absolutely think so. I mean, I don't look at their schedule as that difficult. I'm really not that much of a fan of Chip Kelly and his team. I really don't think Sam Bradford. I mean, I know they spanked the Giants last week on Monday Night Football, but you look at that team, and that's got a lot of holes in it.
I mean, I think it's just a testament to the NFC East this year, especially with Romo and Des Bryant out, that 8 or 9 wins could definitely win you that division.
Right. I mean, Dallas with Romo and Des, I think is the number 1 team.
Absolutely.
I think you look at that offensive line. It's the best offensive line.
Right. That was a 12-win team last year.
Absolutely.
And they were by far and away the best team in that division. But obviously things happened.
Listen, all teams
that race has opened up, and hopefully now the Giants, maybe they have a stranglehold in that division. But we're gonna see.
Now, Nisse, also in that division today was the Washington Redskins, who currently, actually not in last place, Dallas in last place, but the Redskins, been the seller for a while now.
Right.
Before the season, Jay Gruden goes with Kirk Cousins as their starting quarterback over their number 1 pick, RG3, a couple years back. And Cousins has, played inconsistent, but had a great game against Tampa Bay, scoring a touchdown in the last minute of the game, winning 31-30.
Right, they won 31-30, and they overcame a 24-point deficit. And you could see Cousins after a game. There's an audio clip of him saying,
yelling at the media, actually.
Right, yelling at the media, saying, "You like that?" So obviously, there's got to be a huge chip on his shoulder for a guy like that was consistently said he's a backup. The Redskins need better. He was sharing the job kind of with RG3. Even when he had the job, it was kind of seen as a short-term thing. And now he's trying to prove to people that he can actually be a franchise quarterback.
I mean, you have to understand that these guys are human. I mean, and when you're throwing a camera into their face after, a win like that, listen, I've never played a high level of sports as these people, but, just playing soccer in high school,
right.
if someone was to stick a camera in my face after, winning a huge game like he did today, I think I would share some of his sentiments and not be so calm.
And speaking of cameras, one of America's maybe favorite teams after this summer, the Houston Texans, fell to 2-5 today. They were featured on Hard Knocks over the summer.
Right.
Obviously, a lot of attention on them, and they were losing, I think, 41-0.
Yes, it was 49-1
in the first half. They ended up making it 44-26, which is a far more respectable scoreline. But obviously, the Dolphins took starters out, garbage time.
Yes.
The bottom line is that's a bad loss. They're 2-5 in the season now, and they actually just lost Arian Foster to an Achilles injury today. Also, Ryan Mallett missed something for the team.
He missed the flight.
He missed a flight, and before that, he missed a practice. He was in traffic, apparently. It wouldn't really surprise me if he got cut, because for a professional athlete, that's a little absurd.
Well, don't want to branch off, but, Matt Harvey a few weeks ago, the Mets had a workout, a team workout, and he actually missed it. He actually was out late drinking at night at the bars, and he missed that, which was a big story in New York. But back to this story. Listen, I don't know what happened with Mallett. I don't know, if he was in traffic
I just think
or
with Mallett, the problem is the first time he missed practice and said his alarm didn't go off. And
Right.
That's bad enough,
it's a slippery slope.
It's
a slippery slope.
Right, it's bad enough, but then he says to the GM they met, and he's like, "It won't happen again."
Right,
and then he misses I don't know how you miss a flight, and at this point he's already been benched because of his play. Brian Hoyer's been taking over.
Right.
I really don't think the organization is going to give him that much slack. Would not be surprised in the slide if he's.
I'm going to disagree, and here's why. Bill O'Brien doesn't have a quarterback. Brian Mallett, Brian Hoyer, neither one of those guys. Let
me just quickly diverge off that.
Please.
Bill O'Brien does not seem like the type of guy that would tolerate missing practices and
Well, is that based on the persona you saw in Hard Knocks? Is that weird?
I mean, I don't want to say like that's completely based on it, but he seems like a fiery guy. He seems like a no nonsense type of guy. Well, listen,
you have a GM in Rick Spence who's also involved in the discussion, but listen, he doesn't have a quarterback and that can play for him.
At the very least, though, he is Brian Hoyer, who he prefers.
I don't know if he does. I mean, does he?
Brian Hoyer is in the games playing. I don't think Mount played at all today.
He didn't play today, but they've been switching back and forth during the entire year. Waited a while.
Okay, but at least at the moment, Mallett is your second string quarterback.
Absolutely. And
he's missed 2 team things. For me, if I'm a GM, that guy becomes fairly dispensable.
I think it
just does not look good to have.
I think it's a bigger issue of the fact that you in a sense can't get rid of him. I mean, that would just be.
But what if they make him the starter next week? That just sets a precedent for the whole team and.
You don't have to play him.
Having a starter,
that's a separate discussion.
Right, I know, but I'm saying, if you're keeping him around, you're opening up the possibility of playing him. You're saying that's an option.
Yes.
If you have a starting quarterback who sets an example of missing a flight and missing practice, like I don't want to sound old school, but that just messes up the dynamic in the locker room, and then guys there's double standards and what can a lower guy in the team get away with versus the quarterback, and that's just not like a good situation for the team to be dealing with.
I mean, the bigger thing about that is football, NFL specifically, is a sport where everything needs to be on time with meetings and practicing and training. Other sports aren't like that, where you can kind of show up at different times. Obviously, you got to make practice, but players are on different schedules in different sports. Football.
I remember
Go ahead.
Michael Strahan used to say about Tom Coughlin and how tough he was. When he said, get to practice at whatever time, you really had to get there 5 minutes.
Right. Tom Coughlin is known for running his watch 5 minutes fast.
Right.
In a way to get his players to show up on time, which you got to love the head coach of the football Giants.
Yeah, he's still going strong there on the Giants sidelines. Honestly, a lot of their in-game management to me seemed kind of questionable, but that's besides the point. They're 4-3 now. They've got a fighting chance for the playoffs, and so they've had a rough start. I wouldn't say rough. They've had an up and down start.
You start 0-2, and you win 3. I mean, they've been up and down. That's absolutely the case there. And we'll move on now to soccer now, Nisse, which I know is your strong sport knowledge wise.
Thank you.
Let's have a game I know you were watching earlier today. As you got up early for this one, Manchester Derby, really close one there.
Right, so Manchester United versus Man City at Old Trafford. It ended 0-0, really kind of a cagey affair, which you see a lot with the big games in soccer because no one wants to lose, no one wants to give up ground in the title race, and Man U were 2 points behind Man City. Going into this game, Man City had injuries to 2 of their best players, Sergio Aguero and David Silva. So away from home, they're happy with a tie. And Man U don't want to go 5 points behind in the title race. So both of the managers, Louis van Gaal and Manuel Pellegrini, kind of employed conservative tactics for sure. There weren't a lot of shots, and it was just a lot of defensive battling, positioning, jostling, if you will, and not the most boring game, but definitely kind of a chess match, if you will, and it ended with no goals.
Right. Liverpool, a team that fired its manager a few weeks ago.
Right. Brendan Rodgers was given the axe for Jurgen Klopp, and in his first 3 games, 3 ties, which is kind of an ambivalent start to his Liverpool career, which a lot of people were really thrilled about. He's considered one of the top managers in the world, really, and that was a coup for Liverpool.
Definitely.
And again today they tied against Southampton. They scored late on with Christian Benteke, but Sadio Mane tied it up. And for me, Liverpool really are struggling. I believe they're 10th place right now, and there's a perception of them as a big club. I'm sure you know, John. Even if you're not a soccer fan, you know who Liverpool are. You know some of the history behind that.
It's such a brand. It's
LeBron James is an owner.
I mean, the owners of the Red Sox, John Henry.
Right, it's owned by Fenway Sports Group.
Exactly.
Right, exactly. But for me, even though they're considered one of those big clubs, they splash a lot of money out in the summer. I don't really see them coming. Definitely don't see them coming top 4 this year. I mean, already a quarter of the season is gone, and they don't really look like a Champions League team.
Right.
They just don't look like they have the quality. But even in kind of like that top 7 group, there's a lot of teams above them right now that don't necessarily look like flukes, that look like they could be there for the long run.
Right.
Spurs are playing good soccer. Southampton tied them today. And really, like, right, they tied both of those teams the last 2 weeks. And those are the teams they have to beat if they want to be moving up in the spots, and they tied. So really now it's just about handling their games against the lesser opponents. But for me, Jurgen Klopp came in the middle of the year. It's a transitional year. Obviously, they're not going to fire him after 1 year. I think a top 6 finish would be very good for them this year.
I totally agree. Totally agree on that front. Thanks for that little soccer summary there, Nisse. We'll check back more of that next week. Our final topic today concerns something that happened on the sideline during the Giants-Cowboys game. To see if you want to
right. So in the press conference of the game, Greg Hardy wasn't answering questions. I believe one of those questions that kind of angered him was about his altercation with Des Bryant on the
sideline.
On the sidelines, I read on Twitter that he was freaking out at one point after the Dwayne Harris kick return,
right.
And they needed a coach to like calm him down. So the debate that we're going to get into here for a second is, Greg Hardy in the press conference today was answering all the questions, no comment, next question. And that's kind of like what Marshawn Lynch was doing last year with the thanks for asking or it's really just non-responses. So I'm going to ask you, John, do athletes have any sort of obligation to answer to the media in your opinion?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, we've seen Bill Belichick for years not answer any questions during his press conferences. He's even actually been a little fugazi with the injury reports.
But I think
really
even
disclosing who's injured, who's not.
I think there's a level of sidestepping the media, and then there's a level of completely running away from the media.
I mean, it's interesting.
I don't mind if Bill Belichick is not wanting to give away information or Popovich, stuff like that. That's completely okay with me. They're not supposed to reveal their game plan, but I think there is an element of respect that has to be shown to the media, in my opinion.
I agree with that because the media has a job, which is to report information about the team, and this is something that's newsworthy. But it's part of our social media age in a way where we see everything going on the sidelines. We have cameras everywhere,
right?
And so this moment that this argument, which I hope they Hardy and Brian obviously wish was private, isn't. It's seen them on national television.
Oh no, it was public right away. They
were
playing in the replays.
Right, and that's how everything is now. But at the same time, do they have to reveal to the media what that fight was about? No, they don't. I'm sorry, there's just no basis for them to have to explain what's going on.
I agree with that. I just think that, like you said, I mean, these guys have a job to do. This is how they're making their living. So I think it's a little disrespectful when you're viewing these guys, some of which could be among the most qualified in their fields, and you're just not answering any of their questions.
Well, here's the thing. You're making it a story by saying no comment or refusing to.
That's another point, right?
If you just say some garbage cliche, which we see all coaches and players done over
Eli
the years.
Manning is probably the most cliche guy.
I mean, yes, absolutely.
Vanilla everything.
Yes, he's just brutal in those press conferences. Anyway, it's a story now. We're talking about this.
Right.
What
this
Greg
is
Hardy,
drawing more attention to him. No comment is supposed to be a non-inflammatory answer.
Right, and I mean, Marshawn Lynch became a huge. Marshawn Lynch was a huge story at the Super Bowl,
and I think that's reflected in the fact that I guarantee a fine is coming on the way for Greg Hardy. Well, Maybe not.
Now, does
Marshawn Lynch was fined, and if they don't show up, they get fined.
Does it become does the media intentionally make it a story so that the players will talk to them next time?
I honestly do not think so. I don't think that's part of it.
Okay.
I think it's just... I mean, because the reason is how many guys are saying, no comment, next question. If everyone was doing that, it wouldn't be a story.
Right. Well, because some guys enjoy answering the questions. Some guys want to talk.
There's definitely guys that kind of revel in the media. You see Arian Foster last year kind of speaking a British accent in the preseason.
We saw Nigel Hayes during the NCAA tournament last year having fun with the stenographer and everything. But yeah, so
I don't think there's an obligation to give away any crucial information. I just think there's an obligation to, at the very least, give somewhat of a response and just respect the work that they're doing a little bit. That's just
I would agree with that. I think.
On that note, we're going to end the first episode of the 505 Report. I'm Jake Nisse.
And I'm Jon Sklar. We thank you for listening, and we'll see you back here next week.